Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar from Digite, Swift Kanban, and Value Nova on increasing customer satisfaction with iteration delivery with Dr. Masa K Maeda. A very warm welcome to those of you who have already joined us, and those who are joining. I can see a quick count of the attendees rapidly going up, and as we start the presentation, I look forward to having a lot more people on the webinar. So let me get started with some housekeeping and an introduction to the agenda and the speakers, and we'll be started here in a minute or two. So some quick housekeeping rules. So we will be taking questions using the Q&A box that you will, most of you should be seeing on the bottom right corner of your screen. And whenever you have a question, just go ahead and enter that in the Q&A box. And we will take the questions at the end of the session. And we will try and cover as many questions as possible. And if there are any questions that are left over, we will take up those via follow-up emails. The webinar will be recorded, and we will provide a copy of the slides and a link to the recording after the webinar. So you don't have to write notes and things like that. You can just be listening to Masa today, and hopefully you enjoy and have a good webinar and a good Q&A session at the end of that. So once again, a very warm welcome to everyone. My name is Mahesh Singh. I'm co-founder and Senior Vice President of Product at Digite, the makers of Swift Kanban, and I'm going to be your host today. And let me introduce our main panelist today, Dr. Masa K Maeda. Masa has over 25 years of international experience. He's the creator of the Lean Value Innovation, and he's currently writing a book about it. I know that it is supposed to be done fairly soon, and Masa will probably talk a little bit more about it when he talks about it. And he has a lot of experience in implementing Lean and Kanban and Agile across the international community. He's a senior consultant with the Qatar Consortium, where he specializes in Kanban and Lean management and Lean Value Innovation. He teaches Lean Value Innovation at the University of California, Berkeley. He's an accredited Kanban trainer with the Lean Kanban University, and Value Nova is a charter member of the organization. Masa earlier worked with David Anderson Associates, and done a number of other exciting roles before that. Masa holds a PhD and an MS degree from the University of Tokushima in Japan, and a BE honors from the National Autonomous University of Mexico. He's also done studies in psychology, management, NLP, coactive coaching, and cybernetics. And Masa, of course, he founded and he heads Value Nova, which has got offices across the world, especially in Europe and in Latin America, and of course in the US as well. And so Masa, very warm welcome to you, and I'll hand over the mic to you in just a few minutes. Just a quick introduction to the sponsor of this webinar. Digite is a pioneer in web-based collaborative products and solutions for geographically distributed teams. We have offices we have headquartered in Mountain View. We have offices in India and the United States, and we have representation in Europe, Asia Pacific, and the Middle East as well. And our products cover Lean Kanban, Agile ALM, application lifecycle management, that is, and project portfolio management, wide range of products. And of course, as I mentioned just now, Swift Kanban is our flagship Lean Kanban product. We've got a number of recognitions from a variety of people, including Gartner, where we've covered their ALM market scope. Just a quick introduction to Swift Kanban for the Lean Agile business. It's one of the probably the top two Lean Kanban tools in the market, which has been built with guidance from global thought leaders, including Masa and David Anderson. It's very ideal. It's a very configurable product, ideal for both software and IT as well as non-IT functions. A variety of them that are using Swift Kanban today for their business and operations. makes it very easy for distributed teams and functions to visualize the flow of work, limit work in progress, collaborate visually, automate critical performance metrics, and helps you evolve and improve. And it is built on a full platform that combines high configurability with ease of use. It's available both on software as a service as well as an on-premise model, and very easy for you to sign up if you wanted to try it out today. And just the last slide here on some key customers that we have, and this is just a quick view of customers around the world. We have customers in Europe, Asia Pacific, and Americas, and of course in India as well. And we just provide service to a variety of IT and non-IT organizations with our the products that I showed you earlier. So with that, I'm going to transfer control here to Masa. Let me go ahead and make you presenter, Masa, and you should be seeing that right now. Okay, here you go.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here with us. Before anything else, I want to make a quick clarification. Valinova was founding member, one of the charter members that were a part of the creation of the Kanban University. However, rather recently, the relationship no longer exists. I apologize. There should have been an update on the slide that indicates Valinova is a charter member, but no problem. The Kanban University is still in good relationship with us. So Valinova got started in the US, in Silicon Valley, and what we do is coaching, consulting, and training on lean value innovation, lean, Kanban, Agile, Scrum, and other related topics. The headquarters are here in Silicon Valley, where I am at this moment, and we have offices at several countries, and we have some expected growth. And what really matters in the end is the services that we provide, which are a set of different services around those topics. All of you are welcome to look at this in detail sometime later. I won't dig into more than that because we all want to get into topic, I'm sure. But lean value innovation basically just has to do with a framework that puts together in a coherent fashion a maturity on the way of thinking, environment, methods, and tools, and the human factor. And we do this in a ubiquitous way through an entire organization, so that through innovation, the economy of the company is improved. So that said, let's get into topic. Let's get started, which is what we are all here for, I'm sure. So everybody knows about waterfall. And so yes, this very old methodology, which was proposed by Winston Royce in 1970. And most of you might have had the experience of working on a project based on a waterfall model. And we see that there's a set of inconveniences behind it. And those inconveniences have to do, almost anything else, the fact that we do everything just once and in sequence. And we're attracted to Agile methodologies because they change that. What Agile methodologies tell us, it is better if we just work in cycles. We have small, short cycles to be able to do the work, and we start delivering value incrementally. So we have, for example, in the case of Scrum, we have sprints. And within the sprint, we have the Scrum meetings, which take place in a daily fashion. And that starts providing certain benefits. The benefits of creating cycles actually has a background with nature. Everything works in cycles. The human brain does this. And the more frequent the cycle is, the better the results of having the kind of feedback. So this is basic control theory. Some organizations, such as the PMI, have actually integrated that into their models as well. So what I'm showing you here on the screen right now is the basic life cycle for project management from the PMI perspective, and it is very clear there how they also manage this idea of cycles. Also, in principle, they do it for the entire project. What is interesting to me is that waterfall in the end is really not what is being commonly practiced. Waterfall itself also is highly cyclic. And Winston Royce himself, when he presented his paper in 1970, he proposes that idea of cycles. And in fact, the first diagram that I show you, which is the standard diagram for the waterfall practice, is really not what Royce was proposing. That diagram was the introductory diagram for his proposal, but Winston Royce, in his paper, he himself very strongly suggests the idea of cycles, and these diagrams are actually exact copies from his paper, and we can see how the models are highly cyclic. So what that means is that waterfall in itself is not necessarily bad, and what is bad is the way we have been applying it. And what this tells us is that if we work on the waterfall model, and the culture in the organization is very rigid or is very slow to transformation, we can maintain the waterfall, culture, but just mature it to the next, the next level or the next steps or the next diagrams that Winston Royce himself was proposing as the waterfall approach. So that's good news in terms of we are able to actually mature waterfall itself without necessarily having to think about Agile or thinking about using an Agile methodology. So in the end, what matters here is that we're talking about, well, what if we time box things? What if we decide to set fixed amounts of time so that we have a periodicity, and within that periodicity, we start creating and delivering value? And why do we want to do that? Well, for several reasons. And some of them are, well, that limits our amount of work in progress. If we know that we have a short amount of time to deliver value, and there is a fixed amount of time, then what we're going to do is limit the amount of work that we're going to do within that amount of time. And of course, what that means is that the batches are going to be rather small if the amount of time that we have within the time box is small. And what this forces us is to do periodic delivery, obviously. So in the end, the reason behind this kind of a model, such as in the case of Scrum, that we have sprints, the main benefit of doing that is that it brings a discipline into the team that is working with it. And the WIP, the small WIP, the small batches, and the periodic delivery are a consequence of the model. But really, the benefit more than anything else from the team's perspective is the discipline that it brings. And that sounds very nice. However, there's a small problem there, and is that one size doesn't fit all. And what does that mean? Well, what that means is that we can be working on a project in which we have our time boxes, fixed amount of time to deliver value, and that fixed amount of time could be 1 week or 2 weeks or the like. However, within the work that needs to be done, different things that need to get done have different complexity at different size in themselves. So of course, what the model suggests is that we're going to break down into smaller chunks that something that needs to be done, which is nice. The problem is that sometimes it's very difficult to actually break something down to a size that will fit that time box. And forcing the breakdown can make the generation of that value actually more difficult or more costly. And it can compromise quality, and it can actually increment risk. So what that means is that we have to be careful, because in our effort to bring discipline and to limit work in progress and so on, we might actually be getting ourselves into some sort of trouble. So there are different courses of action that are being taken by different teams as they confront this reality. So one of them is, okay, what if we change the size of those time boxes? What if we make, for example, if we keep on using sprints, what if sometimes our sprints are a little bigger and sometimes a little smaller? So basically, we adjust the size of our sprint depending on certain needs. And that could sound interesting, but the problem with doing that is that it starts, breaking that discipline. It starts confusing the customer. So it starts having some inconveniences. Some other teams, what they decide to do is, okay, what if we we identify different kinds of requirements. And then what we say is, well, certain kinds of requirements are going to fit within one sprint, and other ones are going to fit within 2 sprints or 3 sprints. And that sounds nice, and actually is a nice workaround. However, we're still falling into this problem of how do we fit the rules, and how do we make sure that actually all requirements for X type are going to actually be in the need of taking 2 or 3 sprints. And what that means is that actually the delivery of value starts suffering. A third approach that is very typical is to say, well, we have our fixed time boxes, we're generating value, and those stories that are actually a little too big to fit into one sprint, we just let them bleed to the next one or the next one. So basically, we allow an exception to the rule. So those are, again, workarounds, but there's some pitfalls on doing that. So what is very important is, before anything else, is just accept reality. How does the real world actually work? And we have to accept that, well, it's not always going to fit. Sometimes it's going to be a different size, and the the delivery has to be different. Why? Because they are of different nature. So what can we do to do this efficiently? So, and why do we want time boxes? And is there something else that can we do that is not a time box that allows us to actually maintain a discipline or increase quality and reduce risk? And there are several aspects to consider. So first off, we have to understand that most of the management style that is being used in knowledge work comes from the management style within manufacture. And things that work in manufacturing within project management doesn't necessarily work in knowledge work. So one of them is inventory. So if we're working on a factory, inventory is very easy to determine. We can see the stacks and the piles of material as they accumulate at different places within the value chain when we're creating, whatever, refrigerators, automobiles, whatever. But if we're talking about, for example, a software project, it's very difficult to detect that inventory. So if we were to ask somebody, what is the amount of your design in progress inventory, they will actually look at us kind of weird, like, what is this guy talking about? Like, this doesn't make sense. However, it actually does make sense. The difference here is that we don't get to see that inventory. It is intangible. Why? Because the inventory is actually information. However, it's still there, and it accumulates at different points in the value chain. So what that means is that we create queues along that value chain. And those queues have a set of issues, and thus the difficulty that we confront day to day as we work on our projects. So what happens is that if our queues increase, the larger the queue, then we have these issues that are listed on the slide. So the cycle time starts getting longer, obviously, because we have more work that we want to do. The risk increases because the more work we have to do, then the less attention we have to dedicate to each one of them. So risk starts getting higher. Variability increases also because there is more stuff to integrate, for example. The overhead also increases because then I have to work on one item and I start task switching, for example. And we believe that someone who works on many things at the same time is a very efficient person, when in reality, is generating a lot more waste, and so on. So large queues are not a good idea when we're doing knowledge work. However, it's very difficult to see the the problems that this brings. Another issue to consider is batch size. So there is a very simple experiment that has to do with coins. And what you can do is you can have a group of people lined up in which one person has to say toss coins to bring into a certain state, either heads up or tails up, and then pass those coins to the next person once the stack is sorted out and the next person sorts it to the other side of the coin, and so on. So it just goes, for example, heads up, tails up, heads up, tails up. And what you will see is that the larger the batch size, the longer time it takes compared to having the same number of coins broken down into smaller stacks. So what that means is that the smaller the batch size, the better the performance gets. So the same amount of work will get done in less time, and people will be less stressed. And this is a very nice experiment because it starts bringing, an understanding and a visualization of the meaning of, working batch sizes. So if the batch size is small, then we have the benefits that are listed there amongst others. So the cycle then goes down, variability in flow obviously goes down. The risk is lower because a failure in a longer size creates a longer delay compared to a failure in a smaller batch size. Costs obviously get reduced amongst other things because the timing is a lot lower. And let me put it this way: if you break down the batch size in equal sizes, the larger the number of batches of a smaller size, the far less time it takes. So if you run this experiment with 12 coins and 4 people, what you could see that typically those 12 coins take about a little over 5 minutes or around 5 minutes for the 12 coins as one stack, and it takes typically just a little over 1 minute for the exact same number of coins to go through the same number of people. If you have only 1 coin, or about 2 minutes, you have 3 coins stacks, which is amazing considering that it's the same number of people and the same amount of work. And motivation also improves because people work in a better way and they communicate better. So anyway, so all these are important aspects to consider. So what we understand is that batch size and queue size are important, and then there's the issue of variability. So the better we manage and control these, the better off we're going to be. So what is Kanban's approach to to time boxes? Well, the most important aspect is decoupling. So what we have here is that instead of having one and one only time box to design, create, and deliver value, what we do is we have actually a set of different cadences to be able to do the delivery. And what does this mean? Well, what this means is, for example, if we have a Kanban board which reflects my real current process, we can actually have a way to decouple different aspects that have to do with that value flow. So, for example, we could decouple the frequency with which the customer is creating requirements, and we can decouple that from the rhythm or the periodicity at which that work is actually being implemented, and also can decouple that from the rhythm at which that value is being delivered to the customer or to the end user. And that's actually something very nice because it starts eliminating dependencies. So, and we can do that on different aspects. So, for example, we can have a certain frequency to work our prioritization, a different one for planning, for implementation, and so on. What does that mean? What that means is that we can adjust these to that cadence that is the one that works best for that kind of activity. So whereas, let's say, if we have a sprints and our sprints are 2-week sprints, that can bring discipline to the team and work very nice. maybe that weak sprint is something that is stressing the customer or that is stressing the end user because it's not right for them to be able to adjust to that periodicity. So we can actually do this in a way that works better. And to do this, something that we can consider in terms of delivering value is an MMR, which is a minimum marketable release. And a minimum marketable release is something similar to an MMF, a minimum marketable feature. The difference being that in the case of the release compared to the feature, what we are taking into account is the transaction cost of the release and the cost of the cycle time. So from the economic standpoint, an MMR is better than an MMF. So a minimum marketable release gives us a better economic outcome compared to a minimum marketable feature. And so if we have, for example, a Kanban board, this is a Kanban board for a real project from Corey Ladas. And what we have here, if you look on the left side of the Kanban board, there's a set of green post-its. And then you look on the right side, you can also see several green post-its. However, in the middle of the board, there's only yellow post-its, some of them with small orange post-its attached to it. But the predominant post-it on the middle section are yellow post-its. So this board actually is, in a way, is two Kanban boards embedded. And what this is doing is you have, say, features, and the features are the green post-its. Once they get to a certain point in the process, in the value flow, that post-it, which is a characteristic, is broken down into implementable chunks. So each yellow post-it on a given row is the implementable actions for that green feature. So once we get the green post-it to a certain point, which is the implementation part, is broken down, then it is worked, and each task within within that feature is developed in the way that makes the best sense. And then once all of them are done, the green post-it goes to the other side of the board, which means the granular implementation of it is finished, and then we can continue with the value flow. And this allows us to be able to actually start managing the way we are doing that work. So we can determine the pacing or the cadence of each one of these features, or of each one of different aspects of the specific tasks that need to take place for each one of the features, and this increases efficiency. So what we need to consider to do that is that, well, and this is not alien to Agile neither, which is, well, we have to be aware that we have to change priorities. And the best way to change priorities is to change them together with the customer. We're going to do the planning continuously, and we're going to do it with the customer as well. And we're going to be estimating what we need to do. And the best way to do this is to do it at the last responsible moment. So instead of doing it upfront. So SLAs is a way to manage this more efficiently. So I mentioned cadences, and I mentioned it several times. So let's dig deeper into this, because this is actually a core aspect of a way to handle Kanban in terms of the premise that Kanban doesn't use iterations. So the four diagrams that you're seeing here are for entirely different domains. Some of them have to do with physics for astronomy. Some of them have to do with telecommunication signals, and so on. The one on the upper right corner, the one that has the green and red bars, is actually the frequency of delivery for value Innova. So that shows the frequency of value delivery that we provide to our customers. And what you can see here is that all of them have a pattern, and is not a Gaussian curve, which is interesting. What we have is something that looks like a Gaussian curve, but is leaned more towards the left or towards the side. That's one aspect. And the other one, there's outliers. So it kind of goes flat, and then there's a spike somewhere else, and usually it's towards the right. So this is very important because what this means is that if we're doing some quantification of the frequency of delivery to the customer, and we consider only a Gaussian curve to be able to determine sigmas to promise the customer the frequency of delivery, we're going to be giving the customer false promises. What we need to do is we need to consider actually the entire value set. We need to understand the behavior for all the data to be able to come out with a better promise to the customer. If we were to ignore the outliers, then we will give the customer a promise of delivery that is actually less than the real delivery. And the result will be that the customer will be unhappy because he will say, okay, these guys promised, for example, that they were going to deliver value every 14 days at a certain percentage. So they promised to me that 93% of delivery was going to take place every 14 days. And it's actually taking them 18 days. That's why we need to consider the outliers, because that will allow us to tell the customer it's actually 18 days and we will deliver as promised, and then the customer will be happy. Now, this will get even better if we start being more granular. So what if, for example, we're working on a project and we have two teams working on this project, and then we have assigned capacity for maintenance work and for defects. And this decision is in order to make sure that A, both teams have always work to do, none of them is overloaded, but also that we never ever get our Kanban board at full capacity such that if we have some maintenance work or some defects to work on, we can't. We have to wait for some value to be delivered to the data. So this kind of capacity allocation avoids that kind of situation and therefore improves quality and improves value delivery. So what if we were to quantify each one of these swim lanes independently? Well, what this will do is that this will allow us to actually deliver to the customer in a much better ways for each type of work that we're doing. So for example, we will say the team 1 is going to deliver value every 8 days, team 2 is going to deliver value every 17 days, maintenance work is going to be delivered every 5 days, and defects are going to be delivered every 3 days. That's a much better outcome of benefit to the customer, and that actually economically gives us a better result. And you can do this not only in terms of people, but you can do it in terms of different criteria that you identify. So it could be types of work such as defects, or it could be, for example, urgent tasks. We could say, well, urgent tasks, we're going to take care of them right away. We're going to do root cause analysis. We're going to deliver value, and an urgent task is going to take at most 48 hours to be ready. Therefore, it has a different cadence from saying we have a standard task, and the standard task is delivered every 8 days. So, and that's very important. So, what does this mean? Well, what this means is that we have to understand that decoupling has a very attractive proposition, because if we have decoupling between the way we prioritize, when we do the planning, when we do our estimation, deployment, and implementation, what we're going to have as result is that the stakeholders involved in each one of them is going to become more efficient. What is important to understand is that those cadences that we establish are made in such a way that the next step in the value chain is not waiting. So we need to make sure that, for example, our planning, estimation, and prioritization are done in such a way that the implementation part of the value chain doesn't have to stop and do nothing but wait for work to be delivered to them so they can stay implementing what they have to do. That's the only aspect that we need to take care of. As long as that as we always have work to do, as we go to the next steps of the value chain, then we're doing really well. And this results in higher customer satisfaction, of course, because we're delivering value in a much better way with better quality. It is less work for the customer. Why? Because we are not delivering value to the customer in a way that also is good for us. Is an overhead for him, and therefore they are happier about that. The dependencies get lower, so we don't have to wait for the customer to be available for us to be able to do what we have to do. And the team productivity increases. Why? Because we're actually working in a way that allows us to be more efficient in terms of the type of work that we need to do. So what this means is that we have to observe three aspects of lean thinking, and this has to do more with second generation lean thinking, which is we have to consider that it's better to have small size batches. And we have to understand that those batches don't necessarily have to be the same size, all of them. They can be different sizes. It's very good idea to utilize cadences, because if we have different cadences for different types of works or for different criteria, that is what makes sense for our project, they're going to be better off. And also to manage queues instead of timelines, and this is very important. So what does this say, amongst other things? What this says is that, well, the sprints, for example, are a nice thing to have. But if instead of focusing on the sprint, because the sprint has to do with time, we focus on, instead of managing time, which is what the sprint does, we manage queues independently of that time, we're going to be better off. And this has actually been demonstrated even within the Agile space. Very mature Agile teams get to a point in which the sprint itself starts actually limiting them. And the moment the concept of a sprint is put away and there's no longer sprints, those very mature Scrum teams actually increase their efficiency and their productivity the moment the timeline is not there, and then they just focus on managing queues. So the way I see it, Scrum is a really, really nice way to bring discipline to the team, to start managing the smaller queues and so on. But because it has this fixed aspect, once a certain maturity is achieved, then it becomes a blocker. So it's like, okay, we want to go to the next step. Let's do this. Let's do something that has to do with cadences. And we shouldn't think about it necessarily as Kanban. It should be more towards, okay, you use the next step of maturity. And well, one last comment that I have, which is I actually think the most important one of them, is a lot of people talk about Kanban not being right if we need to have time boxing. We're doing software development and we have to deliver this on time. There's a fixed deadline to deliver the entire project. And if we don't have these sprints and these time boxes, we won't be able to deliver because we don't know when we're going to finish. And that is not necessarily true. What we have to understand is that the nature of Kanban is different from the nature of other methodologies, such as Scrum. So Scrum focuses on managing software projects. Kanban doesn't do that. Kanban is a methodology to manage improvement in the organization. And what does that mean? What that means is that, amongst other things, Kanban doesn't change the process. If we have a process that already uses time boxes, Kanban is not there to impose a change. If we don't have time boxes, Kanban is not there to impose a change on that neither. What could happen is that as we apply Kanban, and Kanban brings visualization on opportunities for improvement, somewhere down the road, the team can come to the conclusion that in order to improve, they need to actually stop having those time boxes, or that maybe they need to establish time boxes. So Kanban doesn't force us one or the other. and therefore, thinking that Kanban doesn't work in certain kind of projects is not really, a valid argument. So I think that's actually the most important aspect to understand. And this is the presentation. It's very punctual, but the takeaways are what we need to observe, which is the 3 bullet points at the bottom of this slide. You make sure that you're considering small-size batches. You determine cadences based on certain criteria, which is the one that makes sense for your project, and you decouple those cadences, then you're going to be way better off. And make sure to focus on managing queues more than managing timelines. Okay, so this is all I have for you guys. I thank you, and I think we have enough time for Q&A.
Awesome, Masa. Thanks for a great presentation. I hope that you've enjoyed listening to Masa and to hear some of the key concepts of how Kanban can help in terms of helping the software development process that you yourself use within your organization. We have a number of interesting questions that have already come in, and for those who might still have questions, please use the Q&A box at the bottom right of your screen to ask a question. So Masa, just to get started, the first question that came in was the concept of decoupling, and you explained decoupling from the point of view of the fact that you may have requirements coming in at their own pace, you may have development at its own pace, and so forth. In our environment, we have 10-day releases that we do for defect fixes, and we have quarterly releases that we do for feature releases. Is that an example of decoupling, where I've decoupled or I have defined release cadences or release frequencies based on the kind of work that we deliver in each of those releases?
Well, in this case, I think so. I mean, if you are delivering every n number of days for bug fixes and every m days for features, then you're decoupling those two, and that means you're on the right track. Now what you have to do is you have to consider the coupling along the entire value chain. So for example, for your the features that you're releasing, what you might want to do is decouple the frequency at which the team receives requirements from the time at which the team actually starts implementing those requirements. And why do you want to do that? Well, because the team can work very efficiently if they create value and are ready to deliver that value every 10 working days or every 15 working days. But maybe the customer, the internal customer, or the the PM who is in charge of generating the requirements has the nature of his or her work or their work is such that is not best for them to have to get together every 10 days or every 14 days to be able to get things ready for you. So you say, you know what, guys, it doesn't matter. You do it at your own pace. It doesn't matter. Well, the only thing that is important is that we have work to do as we are ready to take more work. Then that's fine. Then you start decoupling that. Or the release. It doesn't matter if we get value ready every 10 working days. The delivery of that value is going to be at a different pace. That's a better level of granularity in the decoupling, and that's where I would like things to be headed towards.
Great. So the one question that I think probably represents most of the people on the webinar today, they say that we use Scrum and XP, Scrum plus XP. How do we start implementing Kanban?
Okay, that's a very good question. It's easier. It's better to start very gentle, and I will say you shouldn't necessarily think about start implementing Kanban, I think probably a better way to look at this is which elements of Kanban can we start using in our current situation so that we can start going better. So we have gotten very nice results doing XP and doing Scrum, and in what way can some elements of Kanban help us to start continue going, in a better direction. That will be a better way to look at things. And and one in my experience, what works really, really nice is almost always the very first thing I do is establish whips. So you have, for example, you have your Scrum board, and the doing column, you establish a whip, a limit of work in progress on the doing column. It's amazing the result that you get from doing that. It takes a little bit of effort. The team will have to make a conscious effort to respect that. It maybe will take a couple of sprints, but they will see the results, and it's amazing. So that's one aspect that can help. Another aspect that I think is very important is to actually make sure that your board reflects the real process instead of just an ideal process, which is to do, doing, and done. If you reflect the actual process, is even better, because that visualization helps the team start figuring out aspects that they can improve within their own implementation task. And a good third step to take is to establish policies of behavior behind the different types of work that you do. So instead of having all your work be one and the same, namely a user story, you can actually determine different types of user story, and then determine a policy of behavior for each one of them. Those will be nice ways, nice steps that you can take. And again, don't focus on becoming a Kanban team. Focus on just improving. It could be that you get to a certain point that's what works for you, and it could be that for some teams, yes, they end up going all the way to having a Kanban implementation. But in the end, I think the objective should be what makes you more effective, and not have a stamp on the forehead that says Kanban or Scrum. To me, that's not important. What is important is the economic benefit.
So I guess the counter question to that, and again, a number of people have asked this question, is that that I agree with your definition of waterfall that you showed earlier, and it is you're right. It is cyclical. In fact, we call it iterative in our environment. So can we, if we have waterfall iterative, can we still use Kanban?
Yes, you can use Kanban in any type of process, as long as you have a process in place. And I have had customers that say, "Oh, Masa, we don't have a process," which is not necessarily true. I tell them, "Okay, what are you doing right now? Show me how are you doing things right now." And they explain to me, "Well, that's the process. That's where we start." So Kanban, basically, what Kanban does is, where you are right now, that's our starting point. So think of Kanban not as a methodology that is going to replace what you have. Think of Kanban as a blanket that you put on top of what you already have, or think about it as an additive, that's just going to oil better the engine, and it's going to help the engine, work more smoothly. So you can apply it anywhere, because Kanban, in the end, what Kanban does when you begin using it is it brings a very nice visualization that allows you to start identifying opportunities for improvement. And of course, as you apply, the Kanban practices, such as establishing your work in progress, establishing different types of work, which is called classes of service in Kanban terminology, then you start getting more benefit, because that visualization becomes richer and it is more evident where the problems are, and then the quantification allows you to do root cause analysis. But in the end, that's what Kanban does. So your process, good or bad, big or small, Kanban starts right there.
Great. couple of questions that have come, which are related to the customer and to convincing management. So let me take the first one. I worked in a team using Kanban, so I know it works. How can I convince my new boss in the new company that Kanban is not completely open-ended, but aiming at the most valuable target?
Okay. Well, my favorite arguments are always economical. So I present to the person the economic benefit that it will take me to use certain things, one compared to another. So you can tell your new boss that Kanban gives you certain benefits. If you apply, one of the favorite ones is the coin exercise. If you apply the coin toss exercise, you will blow people's minds away. I mean, they will not believe how can it be possible that having the exact same resources, you can get the same amount of work done in far less time with better quality, and people are less stressed just by changing the amount of work in progress. That one alone is enough for somebody to pay attention to you. So that could be a way to show your boss that. So for example, the boss says, well, because Kanban doesn't have iterations, how do I know if I'm going to deliver on time or what is going to happen? The coin exercise will make it easy to realize that time loses importance, not because it isn't important, but because really in the end, the proper handling of the batch size and limiting the amount of work in progress results typically in better quality in less time. So then time loses importance, okay, because the delivery will happen. So that's one way in which you can start argumenting this.
And I completely agree with you on the coin toss game, and that it can really blow your mind away. I've seen a number of instances where I've seen people play that game, and as you said, they start off without having sort of fully understood the concept of the batch size. They start off thinking that it is going to be the same irrespective of the batch size, and at the end of it, when they measure themselves, the smaller the batch size, the better their performance. It just completely it is so surprising for them, and very revealing as to how minor adjustments in the same workload can have such a dramatic result in terms of the final performance.
Yes.
A couple of questions that are, again, as I said, on the customer side. So first one is, customers want to prioritize everything high. So that's that's a common question that I hear. That while you have the ability to tell the customer that they can take their time to prioritize, customers typically end prioritizing everything as high. How can we educate them so that they prioritize more realistically because they're going to get more value?
Okay. Well, I will say that was beyond the limits of the traditional Kanban approach. Obviously, that's not. I mean, that's not a valid argument. Customers typically say that because they don't want to either assume the responsibility of prioritizing, or they don't want to spend the time doing that. So they themselves don't really understand what is more important and what isn't. So there's different ways to do that, and I use quite a bit some innovation games techniques to do this. Another one is just carrying on a conversation, but innovation games in general is a really good way to do it. I have come up with some games myself that are not necessarily the innovation games from Luke Homan. But what is important is to have them get actively involved in dynamics in which they actually really focus on working on them. Within the agile thinking space, there's prioritization based on value. That's actually a really good one to work with customers to analyze the features at business level and make it clear for them, how not everything is equally important. You know, I mean, you can look for that elsewhere, but basically what you do with that, you have like different bucket sizes with different weights, and then you take one feature and you analyze that feature from the standpoint of, for example, does it generate money or does it save money? You know, yes or not, how much, a lot, a little, and so on. And depending on the answer to those questions, then you place the feature on different buckets. And those buckets have a different size depending on the level of importance. And that, in the end, what it gives you is a better appreciation. When I say you, I mean, you know, the stakeholders, including the customers, is a better appreciation of the features, how important they are, you know, how big or how small they are, and they allow you to make decisions as to what you want to work on first.
Perfect. Perfect. And one more question, which is in this you know, in the non-IT space, and interesting to get that, and I think you'd be happy to sort of respond to this. So the question is, we are a contract manufacturer and we produce according to a customer's design and needs. How can Kanban apply to us?
Okay, so well, you can apply Kanban internally without necessarily the customer knowing that you are doing it. And what it's going to do is going to improve the quality and the value delivery. So internally, it's going to give you a benefit. You know, so that alone is worth you know, bringing Kanban. For the other aspect is, so you say we produce according to our customers' design and needs. It is worth putting a question mark at the end of that, because I mean, how do we know that they know, or do they really know? I mean, do they really know what their needs are? We could probably start helping them at that level. So I will say probably, and that depends on the relation you have with the customer. You could start doing both at the same time, or you can just start doing yourself, just Kanban internally. What will happen is the customer will say, wow, I don't know what you've been doing lately, or wow, your the quality is better, you know, the deliveries are more on time, so I don't know what you're doing, but just keep at it. And then you can, you know, invite them to get more involved, and or ask them to allow you to get more involved in the understanding of their needs, instead of just taking them for granted. So this has to do more with, you know, with the human factor aspect, and not with a formal, you know, process, or that has to do with Kanban practices or principles.
And we have actually a number of our customers, customers who use Swift Kanban, who are, you know, they have their own customers, external customers. So they are contract service provider to those customers. And I think this question applies to you know, to what they do as well. And the fact that they are able to use a Kanban board to collaborate with their customer and let the customer prioritize dynamically on the Kanban board before it starts to get worked upon. I think it helps tremendously that the customer is also able to see what is ready to be worked upon, and they can potentially reprioritize something before it gets taken up for work.
Yeah, so
and right, and once it starts, once the team starts to work on it, then the customer also has a very clear visual feedback on, you know, what is the status of their work and where is it stuck and things like that. So I think Kanban helps in that visual management aspect as well, to share the overall status with the customer.
Yes, absolutely. And actually that's, you know, what I mentioned about the high visualization that Kanban brings,
right.
That's what is important. The visualization should be open to everybody. Actually, the more open it is, the more public we make that visualization, the better off everybody is. And but in the case of Swift Kanban in particular, you know, I love how easy it is to do prioritization with Swift. I mean, I'm not trying to sell the product. I'm just being honest. In that, you know, Value Nova, we use Swift, and we prioritize not only based on the standard prioritization within the card itself, but the fact that, you know, we have a swim lanes and we can arrange the swim lanes. What we do with the Kanban boards of Value Nova is we bubble up sweep lanes depending on the level of importance they have. So whichever criteria of prioritization we have, we know that the swim lanes that are up are more important than ones that are down. So scene lanes are continuously moving, sort of like a Java, a lava lamp. But it works great. I mean, people love it, and all of our customers, as soon as we mention to them about that feature, they just really fall in love with that.
Thank you, Masa. That lava lamp comparison was really helpful. All right. We have, sorry, I just realized that we have unfortunately reached the end of the hour, and we are actually a couple of minutes over it. There are a few more questions that we will probably respond to over email. We will definitely respond to over email. I want to thank you, Masa, for a great talk as usual, and I hope that everybody on the webinar today, especially those who are currently using a much more time-boxed approach, have had a sense of how Kanban can help them get to a more continuous delivery and more continuous value delivery to their customers. Thank you all of the participants today. Thank you very much for making the time to attend this webinar. If you need to reach out to Masa, you can see the contact information here. If you want to get to know a little bit more about Digitay and Swift Kanban, you can go to our website www.digitay.com or www.swift-kanban.com or write to sales@digitay.com, and we'd be happy to respond to your questions. We will provide the recordings of this webinar as well as a link to download these slides after this webinar is done. You will see a follow-up email from us, and you'll be able to do that. Thank you once again for attending today's webinar. And Masa, any last-minute thoughts? Otherwise, we will wind up.
No, well, I will say probably something of very high value. I encourage you very strongly to not think in terms of a specific methodology or the goal of implementing a specific methodology. It's better to think about the experience that I have, the knowledge that I have, what works, in what I do, and what value these different elements bring. How do I combine these to be the most successful, project or organization that can be? So it's better to just take elements from different aspects than trying to be a, purist, Kanban shop or something something like that. So I think that's really what matters in the end, is to be successful.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Masa, once again, and thank you all for the participation today. And we'll follow up with some email to you with some download links. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.